Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of K-Pop Music Design. Yes, let's screen. I am Blue from the YouTube channel called React to the K, and I'll be moderating for these amazing producers. We'll go down the line and introduce ourselves one by one.
Hi, I'm Samuel.
What do you do right now?
I'm one of the top liners, producers, instrumentalists for Kairos Music Group.
My name is Kairos. I'm the producer and songwriter for Kairos Music as well.
Hello, that's Kaz, a producer, mix engineer for Kairos Music Group.
I'm Logan, otherwise known as KO. I'm the chief engineer as well as a producer at Kairos Music Group.
Thank you. Part 2 of Get to Know Us is how long have you guys been part of the songwriting business?
I don't know about songwriting business. That's probably been around 5-6 years, right? In terms of songwriting, I think we've been in the game for pretty much the majority of our lives. As soon as we can talk, just try to rap something really silly and just try to come up with things to record with a tape, and we just built up our chops that way. But yeah, anyway.
Sorry, I didn't pay attention. Songwriting business. Like Samuel said, I think we've been at this for a long time. But I think at a professional level, I would say probably in the last 5 or 6 years. It takes some time, but you guys want to give me?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started engineering at a young age. It was something kind of in the family, so whether it's professional or not is to be determined. But I've been doing it for a long time. But yeah, with these guys and at the level that we're doing it, about the same thing, about 5 years.
I kind of started late. I realized that I really wanted to do music when I was 18, and at that point I really knew I had to hustle. So professionally about 8 years now, but been with these guys for about 4 now, and it's been great. So
He was a kickboxer, so don't get into a fight with him. Unless you will.
Fantastic. And I'm curious, do any of you guys know how to play instruments, and if so, which ones?
The kazoo. Yeah, we all have some chops with instruments. I guess my main instrument is probably bass guitar, but we all kind of have, we have a primary and we have secondary, maybe third, fourth.
Mention all of them.
Yeah, a lot of us, grew up in bands and playing in different genres. Rock bands, playing drums, and keys, and all that stuff before we got into this side of things.
Yeah, we're mostly punk rockers. I don't know if you guys ever got into like punk rock music back in the day. But yeah. Anyone else?
We good? Okay. Now, also, I bet a lot of singer-songwriters out there are wondering, do you need to major in music in order to become a songwriter afterwards?
Well, no, not necessarily, but it does help. I would say what makes the big difference between the guys that are out there, you guys that are doing music, and me is just I might have just a little more experience to get there a little bit quicker. But everyone's chops, all these things are something that we develop, and it also depends on how much we put into our craft.
Right. And then now we're going to move on to the most important part of this panel. How are songs created? So from scratch, what happens first? Is it the lyrics, and then the bass, and then the chord progression, and beats and stuff? Like, what comes first?
Well, I think it can change every time. There is no set formula. It's whatever inspires you. It might be a beat, it might be a drum loop, it might be some lyrics or a melody, but at least from my experience, there's a lot of different ways to start a song.
nowadays it happens to be a lot of concepts too, like a certain feeling or a certain type of idea or a direction that people want to go as well. So it can start from anything as long as an inspiration is there. we're able to build a song around that.
Any of you guys Twice fans here? So Signal, I wrote, I think, majority of the first half of the song actually just working out in my garage. So sometimes inspiration just comes out, you know, just in odd places, but you know, it really happens. Like sometimes that's how I start the song with a melody. So that one I started with the intro. If you guys remember the intro. Yeah.
For me, I would specifically say it's mostly melody first, and for me, songwriting is, I'm just going to take this out because I'm talking now too. Alright. I think songwriting is actually pretty dangerous for me because a lot of it happens in the car. So you come up with ideas in the car, you have to pull out your phone to try and get the voice note together, and all the while you have to hide the phone from the cops as well. So it's pretty dangerous, but I feel like doing menial tasks kind of makes you get creative, you know, while you're kind of zoning out. You start thinking about other things, and in our case, it's second nature to be melodic with our zoning out. So.
Right, and so after we have all the music down, after we have it recorded, there's another process that you have to go through before it's radio ready. So for the engineers, can you guys explain to our audience what mixing and mastering is and like what the process is?
Yeah, mixing is a part of where you're blending all the instruments as well as ideas, recordings all together. There is a certain standard in most different types of areas, but also mastering is a different process where it's the final stage, as we like to call it, but it's also an area where when you're working in a studio environment, you're working in something called pro audio. What we normally listen to in terms of iPods, phones, and computers, that's known as consumer audio. The levels, when you come out from mixing, it's going to be really low compared to what you guys hear today. Mastering actually allows you to get up to the consumer level in terms of decibels, but not do it in a way where it's going to distort. Because if you just turn up the volume, it's going to actually end up causing distortion and very unpleasant sound. So mastering does it in a very natural way. And mixing is more of being able to put the tracks together and making it sound nice.
Right, thank you for doing so.
One other quick explanation of that, I like this meme. It's a picture of Scarlett Johansson.
Okay.
And, you know, she's gorgeous, and there's unmixed, there's mixed, and there's mastered. So one is just like, you know, a shot of her, like, going to the store or something. That's unmixed, that's the song, you know, it's a great song. The next one is mixed, and you know, you've got a bit of makeup on, you got a nice dress, and then the last one is mastered, and it's clearly, you know, photoshopped, and it's perfect. So, if you can look at it that way, if you're a visual person, there's...
We Photoshop your music.
There you go. Alright, and K-pop often hops around to many different genres within one song, which may be contributing to the factor in how it reaches out to so many fans. Do you enjoy the sporadic nature of K-pop, and is it difficult to mix many different musical genres into one? That was a long question, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's really difficult to mix genres. I think everyone is into different genres these days, especially how accessible music is. You know, you don't have to go to the store and buy a CD to commit to listening to music anymore. You can just go online and just search it, see if it's good, and you might like it. You know, everyone is pretty open-minded these days. Everyone likes to say they like everything except for country, right? I like country, but you know, yeah, a lot of people like different genres, and so if you hear a K-pop song that happens to have maybe 3 or 4 different elements of different genres, it's not really strange anymore. You know, maybe in the past it was kind of new, but now it's kind of expected, and really, I feel like the reason why people love K-pop is because it expresses a certain type of lifestyle, a certain type of mindset, a positivity. And so, if those different genres coming together expresses that, then I think that's a great song, and I think that's why people might like it, but it may not be because it's so many different genres.
Okay, mic drop. Let's take care of these. Okay, so do you write songs however you like, and then companies listen to your portfolios, or do the companies reach out to you and give you a certain subject and feel, and you compose based off what they give you? Or is it everything?
Well, we get what's called a lead, and usually the lead covers different references that we can use to kind of create that sound, or of course, using our sound, our signature sound, to just what they give us. It's not quite an instruction, I would say. It's more of, this is kind of what we like. But it's funny sometimes because they don't want to limit the creativity, so a lot of times they keep it vague. So they'll tell us, we want something like this, but don't follow that. And I get very confused, it's like, do it, but don't do it. But it's like that a lot of times. They just want to hear more of what we can create in the moment, just based on the lead. So yeah, I'm trying to think of some leads that we received for some of these groups, but usually they turn out pretty different from the lead, just the starting point.
Right, so that means they would like send you an actual song and be like, get inspired from this.
Sure, yeah. Multiple different.
So like 10 different songs.
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow. Okay, and then, we're good? All right, when composing songs for others, would you say you get to add some of your own personal touch, or, which we kind of reviewed already, or are the groups very specific in what they want? Simply put, do you feel you have creative freedom in your work?
Yeah, I think we do have a lot of freedom, and I think the reason why they're so vague, so for example, they might say like, you want to have a feeling of ecstasy, overjoyed, feelings, but also edgy. It's like, well, what do you mean, And so someone might, going into the field, like, they might be like, what are you talking about? You're talking about opposites right now. But I think what they really want, more so than musically, chordally, structurally, arrangement-wise, they're actually trying to walk away with a certain feeling. And the feeling is very specific. What they want the audience to feel is very specific. I think that's almost unique to K-pop, like how focused they are on what they want you to feel when you listen to 3.5 minutes of that specific song. And so over some time we got that, all these specific directions to make it edgy yet super happy. It's just like, okay, I get what you're saying. You want us to create a certain feeling, a certain type of vibe, and so that's kind of how we're working.
And I think that's also why so many international fans enjoy K-pop music, is because it's so emotionally driven with this song, so that the music carries out the message if we don't understand the lyrics.
Sure, and one of my recent leads that I have right now, they talk about the choreography. I can't give away who they are. Just say there's a name and a number. Yeah, we're working on stuff where sometimes they say, please incorporate things that can help with the choreography. So something else to consider.
Right, and then how do you get inspired to write certain melodies with certain messages? Like you talked about just randomly coming up with melodies in the car. Like, do you guys get together and have jam sessions, or do the melodies just come to you?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times, whatever it starts with, we've worked together for a long time at this point that we can just kind of sit there in the studio and start the vibe. We get to a place pretty quick. Whether it can be just a kick drum and a bass line, but it can develop into a verse and a chorus and pretty fast. Where those things come from, I'm not sure. Really, it's just taking into consideration all the stuff we have just kind of mentioned. What kind of vibe you're looking for, what group or label it might be for, kind of will help steer the ship to where you might be coming up with a lot of ideas.
Right, and then I'm curious, what is the writing process of a song like just by yourself? If you're composing a song by yourself versus working together, like how does it differ?
Well, I actually like to start with the verse, because I like to try to I like to beat myself, meaning like I like to try to think of a nice verse and try to beat that, with a better pre, and try to beat that with a better chorus. So it's a constant layer of just challenges, but that's just the way I like to start. But it doesn't mean that I always start with the verse. I like to, that's kind of what I focus on. So like when I mentioned Twice, Signal, that song I started on the verse, for example.
Yeah, I think for us, the process is always different per song and per lead. Some of us we start off with something by ourselves, and then we come together as a team and start adding different flavors. And especially some of us have better strengths in certain areas, so we would go to them and ask them to put their touches on it too. And I think it's a unique process. Personally for me, I like to aim for a certain sound or get inspired by a certain sound and build a beat around that. And then the rest of the gang will come in and would start putting their touches on it too. But I mean, it's happened in so many different ways. And sometimes we did have nights where we would all just come together and make a song ourselves. So it's always different. And for us though, we always start with some sort of idea, and then we just kind of branch off of that.
I think, well, let me just ask, how many people write songs by themselves here? Okay, that's awesome. We've been writing for a long time just by ourselves. I mean, I only met most of these guys like within, half a decade ago. But when I wrote songs for myself, it was lyrically based. It had to be amazing lyrics because I grew up on John Mayer. I grew up on, I grew up on the Beatles, but their lyrics aren't that great. But I think lyrics, a great lyrical placement in a certain verse, happens only once. So you have to go back and listen to it over and over again. That's psychology right there. It makes somebody get addicted to the music, and I think that's what I want. But in a producer standpoint, I think it's really important to work with other people because you can use individual songwriting as a way to express yourself. And expressing yourself, if that's your priority, then write it by yourself. But if you're trying to make something that's objectively good, meaning the vast majority of people will judge it as this is a good piece of art, then you need to have 3 or 4 other judges with you telling you unanimously this is good. And so that might require someone else's input. So anything that requires judgment, Olympic sports or whatever, it's not one judge. It's 3, 4, 5. It's different people because they all have different opinions. Those opinions clashing together, hurting each other's egos, is what's going to make a refined stone, So, mic drop.
All right, and when composing an album, what kinds of songs are important to feature? A wide variety of genres, and what order would you put them in?
Well, I mean, I don't think full-length albums are as relevant these days as they were. So like the double-length concept album that travels this huge, landscape, peaks and valleys, like we don't really do that as much anymore. A lot of times singles are coming out, or 3, 4 song EPs. So in that case, it's important to show what you can do and have some variety, but especially as a new artist, you have to have some kind of angle. There's a lot to think about it if you're trying to compete commercially. If you want to write songs for yourself, you can do whatever you want. If you want to compete with the best, around the world, then you have to take a lot of things into consideration. And that changes. It changes from time to time. So, mic drop.
I guess that's how we're ending all of our sentences.
We're going to break a lot of microphones.
I mean, the one over there is already dented, so I don't think we can do any extra damage. So, do you have any predictions on possible ways that K-pop or pop music will evolve next?
Well, I'll say this. People say, we talk about where music's going, and we talk, especially when we discuss it amongst songwriters and producers. If you guys notice, I always say study hip-hop, because especially in this world, you just have to understand what the foundation is. I say this because if you listen to, like artists like Justin Bieber, that's really hip-hop beats with, more of like R&B melodies on top. You listen to Katy Perry, that's hip-hop beats with pop melodies on top. Maroon 5, that's hip-hop beats with rock elements on top. So if you think about it, there's a lot of hip-hop going on, and the reason why I think hip-hop in that sense is important is because it's really kind of the culture, the part of the culture that we live in and we're used to seeing. So just kind of bringing that, especially being Western producers here and bringing things overseas to K-pop, J-pop, T-pop, just we're kind of all over the place now. But it's really interesting to see that, just bringing that type of music, and now we can talk about future music. But we have to really understand that. And just to add one more thing, I think it's also very important to know outside of music too. You know, sometimes it's important to understand what's going on with technology, just culturally where things are moving. I don't like spending too much time on the internet, but just when I see what's going on, like the dance, what is that crazy dance that went viral? You know,
Drake rolling car.
In My Feeling, Drake video. There's that thing where you wave your arms side to side. Flossing, you know, all these things. I mean, these things are. I mean, it's in the Pentagon song, right? I mean, you see culture. You know, these are things that we see. It's not just the music elements of it, but more things that we have to understand beyond it.
I think you also have to ask, for the future, if you're considering the future of music, you have to think about, why is hip-hop so relevant today? Of course, lyrically, it's the best, but it's also rhythmically the best. And so, a third of music is rhythm, and for rhythm to reach its optimal point, at this point, it's hip-hop beats. So you have to think like, okay, well, you have to beat hip-hop in terms of rhythm, so what is that going to be? You know, you have to kind of think that way. I mean, if you want to, get complicated, for sure. But if you want to get people moving, you know, you want to get people dancing, nothing does it better than hip-hop today. And so you can't, if you're trying to think of like future music, start by thinking, what is going to make someone want to dance even more? You know, people don't make rock songs with hip-hop beats just so that they can sell the record. They do it because it feels good. Like, hip-hop just feels good. It's undeniable. You know, no one can deny that a hip-hop beat is like amazing. So try to think of it that way, whether it be rhythm, melody, you know, harmony, all these things. Like, what is it gonna take for it to reach its peak? And that is where I think the future is.
Well, thank you. And slight left turn onto a different subject. Do you guys ever get involved with the music video concepts for the songs you write?
It does come up. We do get asked our opinions or suggestions, whether those make it to the finish line. It depends, but it does come up. It's not really part of our day-to-day, though, I wouldn't say. People ask, though.
Can you give us an example?
We thought of this crazy concept for a music video for like a female group, and we said it was crazy. It was like it was video game levels, and they go to each level, and there's a love story, and we told this elaborate thing to the A&R and the management, and yeah, they said no. But,
it would probably be so expensive to make this video that we have no real experience in there. But yeah, we're like lasers and dinosaurs. That's only the first verse, like, so I'm sure it was way over budget.
It's about getting sucked into the video game, and a month later, Jumanji came out, so we were on to something.
That's true.
Damn it, The Rock.
Right, and this next question is specifically for Kairos. So you've written the 2017 Mama Song of the Year for Twice's Signal. Could you tell us your reaction about receiving this award, and did you have any idea that this song was going to be the award-winning song?
Well, I remember it was nominated, and during Mama I didn't even watch because there's so many good music and good groups that are out there. So I got the news from my wife, Jen, listen back there, and she told me about it, and I was ecstatic. I was really happy because I was happy that it reached out to that many people, and that many people responded. It wasn't necessarily all the good comments. I really embraced all the bad too, because it just I'd rather have someone respond even with their finger and click a dislike than not click anything at all. And so if I can make you move anyway, even just in a way where you comment a few words or many words, I think that's our goal usually, as performers or songwriters, producers, because we want people to respond, and our music is meant to be shared, and so it was a thrill to know that people responded.
Right, to go off that, do you guys ever look on social media after one of your songs is released and read fans' comments?
Yes, I do read. But yeah, it's you gotta learn to kind of filter out some of the things, and you gotta learn to embrace them. And I do try to respond to as many people as possible. possible. But it's just amazing because, you know, I'm just always so appreciative of the fact that people are, you know, enjoying it and appreciating it. So just want to thank you guys all just for coming out because it really means a lot to us.
And going back to Signal, was this specific songwriting process special in any way? Because I heard that JYP himself helped write and arrange the song.
Yeah, it was, they sent me some basic ideas from JY Park. JY Park had some ideas with some, you know, kick drum, snare, some hi-hat, and some bass. It was very basic. And then I added the melodies. I wrote the structure and some arrangement, and then we sent it out, and they told me it was going to be the next single. So that was another really exciting moment, you know. And so we went back and forth, just working on the different ideas. I remember there were a few times where JY Park would ask, you know, can you try to beat this melody, you know, and so I'll send him a few, and he'll send me something, and sometimes if I don't like it, I'll try to send him like 10 more, try to trump over that, you know. But it was fun, and JY Park is, you know, he's a legend. He's one of my favorite songwriters growing up, so it's just been amazing just to be able to connect, you know, now. Yeah.
Right, and kind of going off of that, since you guys are stationed in LA as a music group, it must be difficult with deadlines and communicating with people in Korea. Are there any stories or difficulties that kind of happen?
The stories are in my dark circles of my eyes. I mean, we don't sleep much, but I mean, I think we naturally don't sleep until later anyway. I think that's the majority of us. You know, we're all on our phones anyway in the bed, so might as well be making music. But yeah, a lot of the stories are just kind of, we have to meet a deadline, it's like 5 a.m. or whatever it is, and we just have to scramble and get it out there, and you know, we're dead tired, and we're making like poor judgments. We don't even know like what's good or bad by that point, and we just scramble and get it out there, and then, you know, sometimes we get that placement, and it's like, you know, hallelujah, so.
Well, and then in some cases, recently, you know, we go over there. So we might be in Asia to work on some projects, and there is a lot of that stuff to be coming out soon in the near future. But yeah, it is funny because, you know, I can like look at my phone and do the math of what, you know, the time zone changes. You know, you flip it at a couple hours. So you're always thinking it's kind of a weird split your head in two ways, because it's, you know, we might be texting somebody in the middle of the day, like, what do you think of this thing? And you're like, wait, shoot, it is 4 in the morning. But then they get back, because that's the life we live. You know, we gotta be available, especially if you're doing this.
And one disadvantage is that Asia is living in the future, like one day ahead.
Yeah.
So when they say a certain date, it's like one day before for you. So you gotta keep that in mind.
Shorter deadline, oh no. So you have worked with artists such as GOT7, B2B, Shiny, Suzy, Jessica, and many more. Do you have any interesting stories to share when you're writing for them?
Wow, there's a lot. Let's see. Well, GOT7, when I finished that record, right when I finished it, around that time, my first son was born. Jaden is probably running around here somewhere. And I had to run back to the studio to finish the record. So it was kind of, you know, in some ways it was very special to me because I always remember that. Jessica, Summer Storm, if you guys check that out, that song was actually meant for another group. It was actually meant for Twice. And that, especially the chorus, I think we brought that in for Twice. Right, and maybe the first half might have been for Ailey, and then the chorus was actually from Twice, and then so it was one of the things that we were working on with the different agencies, and you know we had those melodies still available, so we put it together, and then Jessica took it, and she did an incredible job doing that record. So
Definitely.
yeah, I think we'll have some of these guys maybe give some info.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a record that just kind of, to me at least, came out of nowhere. I wasn't really familiar with it, but to hear the story and to meet the guy in person, just an amazing person, and overcome some stuff and great songs, and definitely trying new things. So it was an honor for us to be involved with that. We got to do a lot of different things. It really wasn't from start to finish, like some records are. It was some stuff we mixed, some stuff we added a little production, but you guys should definitely check it out. I know there's, I think, 2 videos out now.
One thing that I found pretty special about that project was that it wasn't, I can't say traditionally, but it's not typical K-pop. It's actually much more Western in terms of the sound. It actually reminded me a lot of like Coldplay's older stuff, which is Coldplay's best stuff. But it's very emotionally driven, and so it can't have these like very fast 4-on-the-floor kicks or anything like that. It has to be very vocally based, and everything needed to serve the vocals. Nothing should be a distraction for the vocals. So we took that approach. Any of the leads, it was all pretty much organic. A lot of guitars, real bass, real drums, things of that nature.
Cool. And what is your favorite time to share your music? Would it be watching performers perform it on stage, or sing it and record it in the studio, or playing it for a loved one?
I don't know. I think it's always neat when I get messages how people are hearing our music somewhere at the gas station or somewhere, just because we spend so much of our time in the studio. So to have people experience it out there and then just let us know, that I think that's always special.
Awesome. And this is a question for all of you. If you could choose one song, or I guess let's do 2. What are your top 2 favorite songs that you've written or taken apart?
Probably my first one is Next Page, only because that was like the first placement for me as a producer in the K-pop market. Actually, beforehand, I worked a lot with American artists, and every time I would try to tell my mom, she wouldn't understand them. But being Korean, working with a Korean group as someone like Twice, she instantly knew who that was, and she was actually really happy for me. She thought that was like the beginning of my career, which happened like a lot longer than before that. So that was definitely a great moment for me. Peniel's That Girl as well. That was a different style that I had to actually approach, because I have a very strong hip hop kind of trap base, but to go into something that is more on the dance EDM side was something that I've always wanted to try, and it turned out really cool. So it turned out better than I expected. So yeah, those are my 2 favorite songs that I've written.
Yeah, I think That Girl for sure. That was one that, man, we were up all night. We were like, sun came up, sun went down, sun came back up again. Like, for That Girl, that was such a doozy to do, but we pulled through it, and it got such a great response, and I feel like that was just special because of that.
Thank you guys for that. Yeah. For me, it hasn't come out yet. I think it's always music that we're working on. I think for the songs that we've done, it's always special to us because there's always stories attached. But for the music that's coming out, I'm just always super excited for you guys to check out. So I'll kind of get some hints, on my social media, the real Kairos. Just
Check them out
really, I like songs that we're working on right now, and I really can't wait for you guys to check it out soon.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think there's been a song publicly released that I think is like the best work yet. I'm not a huge fan of G-Eazy, but if you guys know the last song in his latest album, I think that record's amazing, by the way, but he says a line where it says, "I've made Grammy albums that will never see the light of day." And so he means he has so much music that's never even been released. That's the same with all producers, all artists. Like, they have so much music, and to them, they're like, this is gonna be like the one that's gonna sell like 5 million copies. And for some reason, maybe politically, or they just never got around to it, it never sees the light of day. And we have plenty of those. So for me personally, I have like 10 or so songs, you know, in our portfolio that I think is like amazing, but you guys just have to take my word for it.
Right. Do you have social media that, like, if it ever gets released, you can be like, by the way, if you're at the KCON LA that one time, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, should we just all share our
social media? Yeah.
I'm at SamuiLEE. So it's Samuel, but spelled with an I, and then EE. Samuel Lee.
It's recorded, so you can go back, react to the K, and just make sure you follow him. And we'll find the songs that are his favorites. Okay, so when writing the lyrics to a song, like, has there ever been a time when you wrote something that was so personal to you that you didn't want to release it?
No. But I think for more of the personal stuff, I just keep for myself. I'll give a little interesting fact. When I did Yes, No, Maybe for Susie, the Yes, No came from the demo title that J.Y. Park sent me. So he sent me a beat, and in the file there was a mention of a yes and a no for some of the music stuff. And I just started singing melodies that said yes, no, maybe, because I didn't know what he was trying to say. I'm like, yes, no, maybe, you know. And then and they said that they're going to title it Yes, No, Maybe. So I thought that was just really funny and fascinating. But sometimes lyrics, I don't want to say they're meaningless, but you know, you can make meaning out of it, you know. And I think for something like that, it's you know, that's what happens.
Thank you. And I'm curious, do you have to study a group style before writing for them? Like, is research necessary to help you write for certain groups?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What do you look into?
You gotta study. I mean, even I think the that link you talked about yesterday. Like, every label has such a different style. Every group within those different labels, if we're talking about like the bigger labels, they really do have their own styles because they have to stand out. You know, there's a lot. K-pop isn't just one sound. There's so many different sounds, and especially, again, I keep saying compete. If you're looking to compete, if you're looking to beat us, you have to put in as much, if not more, work. You know, if we want to try to beat the other guys out here, you know, they're working around the clock. So research is absolutely necessary. If you're trying to write for a certain artist, you need to know where they've been. You need to know where they're potentially going, and hopefully you can steer them and lead that ship. So yeah, absolutely. The style, the choreography, you know, the way they dance should influence the beat that you're making. You know, the style of lyrics, everything. Their look, you know, are they flashy? Are they darker? You know, there's a lot to it. You know, their color scheme. You know, a lot of people can look at different chords and musical notes and see them as colors, or at least, you know, hear it that way. So there's so much to go into besides just the music, but yeah, you absolutely have to study, research.
I think if possible, you should even go into the members, you know, try to study the members as well. Each person has a different personality. That's a part of why K-pop is so charming. You know, each member of the group has a certain role, or they're funny, or they're really immature, or whatever it is. You have to work off of that, honestly, you know, and I think that's really important. For example, when we were trying to write for Twice and stuff, like, that was the first time I ever really started researching Twice. And, you know, people might say I was fanboying, but it's really for research purposes.
I remember this funny story. My wife would tell me, she'll catch me sometimes in a room, like, trying to sing like a girl, you know. And I'm like, can you know, lead? I'm trying to do Momo's voice, you know. And, no, but it's like, I think the best way to explain it is when we do these sessions, we hire music guides, and what guides do is they'll try to sing like the artist that we're trying to pitch for. For instance, if we're gonna pitch for Britney Spears, I'm not gonna put on my voice and tell her, try to imagine it. But if we have a voice that sounds like her, she can picture that record being hers. So that's somewhat of a strategy, and that's kind of what we do here. So I say this a lot. These guys are probably so sick to death of me saying this, but I'll always say, hey, a little more sauna, You know, sauna bounce. I call it sauna bounce. Because I think sauna bounce. More sauna bounce, more energy. You know, I'll say that to the vocalist. Because she kind of has that characteristic of what twice. If you hear sauna, you know that that's twice. But like Sam was saying, when you hear these different certain characteristics, you can recognize it with a group or even an agency.
Awesome. And this question is kind of following you up. So when you're writing for a group with many members, do you think about line distribution between each member, or do you study their vocals and write what you think for yourself? Like, oh wow, so this person isn't marked as lead singer, but I think they should have all these parts.
For some time, I think, and these are things that we obviously have to study, but I think Nayeon from Twice, she usually starts the song, right? If you guys know, like she starts the song, and Nayeon and Jio are the singers. So I have to think about the rappers, how they're gonna rap, and just kind of their range, especially the vocalists, what their ranges are, and things like that. But it's you would imagine it, and sometimes it works the opposite. I imagine. You know, when we did Next Page, I imagined the vocalist singing these parts and, you know, other members rapping it, but it kind of flipped when we finalized it. So.
Right, so then would it be the A&R people who come back and say, okay, actually we want these people?
Sure, yeah. A&R, they're a big part of the process because their input, they're going to try to help steer in the right direction or where they want to go. So yeah, they would be the ones giving that input.
Cool. And do you guys have any favorite K-pop songwriters to write with? And how does your writing process vary with each one?
Sam, Kairos, and KO are my faves. Okay.
I'll give it $5 later.
All right, and then we have our last question. Is there any advice for people aspiring to become producers like yourself? And anything you wish you knew when you were first starting your career?
I'll share first. I would say it's okay to fail. I think so many times, you know, not just in music, but I think failure just really stunts our growth, you know, and just cripples us so many times. And for us, in our industry, failure is like breakfast, you know, it's an everyday thing. But that's the makeup of success, you know. I think if we understand that, then every successful thing you see out there are all made up of failures. And so I just want to share that with everyone because I think it's important that, you know, we don't move away from it, but we embrace it.
One thing I would say is take it one step at a time. I think K-pop is such a grand thing. It's such a cultural, global movement now that anyone that's involved in it, you assume that they just kind of like belong there, they've been there from the beginning. An example is if you look at BTS, they came from an independent label, they're not from one of the big three. Now they're colossal, they're like bigger than Western artists. You know, how did that ever even happen? Did they ever imagine that happening? I don't think so. And so from a songwriting standpoint, start by writing a good song. Start by writing a song that's undeniably good, not just your mom thinking it's good. You know, make something that's consistently good over and over again, and then you can start making something good in different genres as well. And so build up that skill. I would say nobody can get into K-pop or songwriting or producing in general if you don't build up your chops. Just the dream alone is a lie. You're actually saying you have a dream, but it's not a dream because you're not willing to work for it. If you really have that dream, you have to work for it. There's no shortcut.
Oh, I just want to add, I always share this with our guys and our interns and our assistants, but inspiration is such a big part of everything we do, you know, and if you guys can walk away today with any sort of inspiration from us, I'll be thrilled, I'll be so happy because I'm always trying to find inspiration. I know there are people that say, well, you know, I'm only inspired when I talk to you, or, you know, no, that's not going to cut it. You have to, you have to figure out how to be inspired then, you know, every day. I think inspiration is going to be a big thing. And I think there's something that we're always inspired by, you know? And on that note, is it okay if we actually play something and show you guys and open up our sessions for you guys so you guys can take a look at this? It's top secret stuff, so don't tell anyone. What do you guys want to see? Let's see.
Should we use screams?
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay.
Sure. Twice? You guys want
Okay, we're not. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3, twice.
B2B? or that girl.
So we'll show you Susie.
This is my own project we're working on at the moment.
Let's open twice, and then we'll leave some other things. We'll play for you guys on our social media, I guess.
Ooh, Pro Tools.
We spend a lot of time coloring. That's all we do here. Cool. So we have our session open here. This is the next page. Okay. So you can see that we have a group that's drums. We have a group that's going to be instruments, and we have a bass that's separate. Low end bass is going to be very important, especially with what we do and how we sound. We like to incorporate a lot of detailed bass because low end is tough. I don't know if you guys ever experienced it, but when you hear it, bass is going to be the thing that you really feel, especially in a concert setting or a club. So, Tobi, why don't you kind of explain to us what we're looking at here as well?
Yeah, so for those that are interested, this is Pro Tools. What we, every process is always different. We might start off with the drums first. We might even start off with the bass. This is the full session, so this actually does have the twice vocals in it. As you can see, this song is not dense. And, a lot of people think the higher up you go, it means more tracks, more instruments, or you need more sounds or anything. But as you can see, there's only 4 or 5 instruments, and then the rest are drums. That's just a little brief overview of it.
I'll tell you guys a quick story. So, when we did this record, Momo was really sick, and they sent the vocal file for her, and it was just, yeah.
I feel bad for her.
It was froggy. And there's a video out there, and I put it on my Instagram. She actually talked about it. But we actually asked them, can you send us another take? But because of their schedule, they weren't able to do that. So we did some work behind it. I don't know if do we have that?
The raw?
Yeah. We'll just play a little bit about, just break it down and maybe just play.
ISO the track, maybe?
Yeah, ISO a couple tracks and then we'll bring it together.
Sure. So we'll start off with the drums. Sorry, this is kind of hard to see from this angle. Yeah. So on this song, I think it started from the drums. One of the biggest things that we really got inspired by is this sound, and I think it was a combination of a scream and a saxophone together. So let's see. I think this is so already there you can hear the song just come alive. And that's not adding the bass as well too, which Sam plays. Unfortunately, we can't hear the bass with these speakers. But eventually, the song starts doing a different genre. It's more of a softer ballady kind. It's more on the pretty side of things. So we'll dive into that a little bit. And the drum beat also changes as well too. So. So we switch up the drum beat, add different elements to it. And the chorus is adding more instruments as well too, but it's not much.
vocals.
Okay. So yeah, we just want to have some time for Q&A. So
Yes. So if you have a question, we'll pass around the microphone. Just right now, raise your hand if you have a question. See you first. Yeah. Mic throw instead of mic drop.
So we just have them line up here and then just ask the question.
Sure. Line up right there if you have a question, right behind this lovely person. Yeah.
So, I'm just curious, do all four of you have like equal knowledge on like songwriting and like mixing and mastering?
No, I think a part of the reason why you want to have a group is because you actually make up for each other's, anything they might lack, and your expertise is going to cover theirs. And I think that's what's beautiful about a team. So we never ever measured our expertise on a certain scale. Like how much do you know? Well, I know this. We never did that, but I would imagine we really help each other out because there's certain areas where we might be stronger than the other.
So the two gentlemen right here would be like more in charge of the mixing and mastering process, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Then I have a question. Like, how long does it usually take, like, for mixing and mastering? Like, how many?
I think for us, we got it down to about 4 to 6 hours, only because we have deadlines. We work with many different mixing engineers. It's everybody has a different workflow. I think that's one of the biggest things. It's not necessarily what plugins you use or program. It's always a workflow kind of thing. And for us, as we've been working together for a while now, we kind of understand each other's approach, and we just kind of get it done.
Yeah, and there's a lot to just mixing than getting there and playing with effects and levels. I mean, you could be comping vocals, you could be tuning vocals, you could still be doing arrangement decisions, organizing, color coding. I'm not even joking, is pretty important to get the workflow.
Yeah.
So there's definitely processes to it, but yeah, 4 or 6 hours.
Then I'm pretty sure since you guys are like professionals, then you guys will have like the expensive machines in the studio.
Well, honestly, there is, it's great to have good toys, but I think it's nothing to do with, it's the person, it's the
person behind it.
Yeah, not the hammer, whatever that saying is. Like,
It's the wizard, not the wand.
Yeah, wizard, not the wand. There we go. Like, I feel pretty confident with stock DigiDesign plugins. I could mix something. It wasn't always that way, but I would never say you should use what you have tool-wise as an excuse of why you're not there. It's probably because you haven't put enough practice in yet.
I would say the gear is only good as the person behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All of us have laptops for a reason now, and
But yes, we do have very expensive gear.
Yeah, because I make music just for myself, so that I still have to rely on like VSTs, VSTIs. So then, like for mastering, do you have like a set template that you always follow, or like a guideline that you follow?
somewhat. If you have your own sound, you kind of go through a certain process, but the settings can be very different. It's just eventually you start getting to the point where you figure it out, and you kind of, as long as you have an idea in a certain direction, you'll start heading naturally.
And I think your questions are beautiful, and I would love to talk with you afterward, personally.
Yeah, sure.
But we do have a line forming, so.
And that's all my questions.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you.
Do you guys have like a set program that you guys all use? Is there like a standardized program?
We do a lot of post in Pro Tools, but I use Logic to do production, meaning I create a lot, I write a lot in Logic.
Yeah, I personally started off in GarageBand, and I moved into Logic, and then I started using Logic and Pro Tools together, but I got tired of kind of switching back and forth, so I just stuck with Pro Tools at the end, so.
Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Pro Tools.
Thank you.
We should edit HD.
Hello, my name is Kenny. I'm a starting music producer.
Nice.
And how did you find your team?
That's a long story actually, but I'll make it really quick though. These guys, Hoban came on board a while ago, and he came through the interview process, but he's someone that I picked out of probably among 60 different people that I had talked to that week. Wes and I, we almost never met. I always like telling our story because on my last day of my job in Chicago when I was there, I was walking out and he was walking in to check out the studio, and we crossed paths. And then my boss at the time told me, "Hey, can you talk to this client?" And then I was already checked out. I was leaving, but I said, "Oh yeah, sure," And so we talked, and we never stopped talking since then. And that was years ago. But yeah, but Wes came out here from Chicago as well. So yeah, and Sam, he's my brother. So we know each other for our whole lives. Yeah.
So do you have any advice on like how to find your team? How to kind of find your team?
You know what? I hate to say it, but you're just gonna have to come across a lot of bad people to understand, and develop trust with the good people. But I always say there's a lot of bad experiences out there, and even so, a lot of bad people out there. But when you do find the good people, you have to absolutely keep them close. And that's why I actually started Kairos Music Group, because we wanted to try to bring everybody on board that really believes in the same thing.
Finding good people is the most important thing, but the next most important thing is finding out what your strengths are and what you need outside of yourself.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Hi.
Since like most of the K-pop idol groups, they have rapper, what do you think about the awkward rap part? Especially when there's like a ballad.
So you're saying like almost like where it doesn't fit. It's like forced. It's forced. Well, what do you guys think?
I don't like it. Yeah. I think rap. Well, it depends, because if they deliver it wrongly, because you could make rap sound pretty natural in a ballad. You can still do it. But if they're like going really hard, like Tekashi 6ix9ine, rapping a ballad, it's not gonna work.
No, but I think that's a great question, because obviously, there are members in a group that they do specific things, and it might not necessarily cater to songs. But I think that's part of the A&R's job, to make sure they find songs that suit the group. So if the song doesn't fit them, then you can blame the A&R.
So you guys don't do that?
Oh, no, and we get actually some flags sometimes for line distribution. Like, people are mad because they're like, "Hey, you didn't give this," but it's not always our call. We make suggestions, but there's someone else that makes that final call usually.
Thank you.
So you all mentioned that you take into consideration fan feedback from social media.
Sure.
You're writing for pop music, mass appeal, those kinds of things. How do you balance, I guess, feedback that you get in growing your sound for mass appeal without kind of falling into genericism or something that is safe that everybody likes but isn't interesting?
That's a really good question.
I mean, yeah, it's a balancing act. You don't want to be like everybody else. You want to push the envelope, but you don't want to be so new or inaccessible that people don't get it. So it's a moving target. It changes month to month. It changes year to year. It changes week to week. It really just depends. Some groups are a little more adventurous than others. Some are a little more stuck in their ways. So I think there's elements that are classic that will never change. Catchy melodies, things like that. Mix that with some really modern beats or some futuristic crazy drops, and then maybe you have some formula, or you stumble upon a secret sauce that works for a couple months and then it doesn't anymore.
Right, but that does happen. We do come across conflicts where they'll suggest something, and we really believe that the trend is moving this way and this is going to work best. So it really comes down to the relationship. How much trust there is between the A&R or an artist and the team that they're working with. So yeah, that's kind of the process. Thank you so much.
Who are your favorite artists or bands in general? I guess where do you like to draw inspiration?
What was the last one? I'm sorry.
Where do you like to draw inspiration?
Inspiration? Well, my favorite artist, I would have to say, is Michael Jackson and Kanye West. But it's weird because I can't really say there's an all-time favorite always, because I'm trying to listen to more music, and I'm trying to always get inspired by new music. So for me, I guess I just get inspired by I don't know. Just I think when I see movement.
Do you ever get writer's block, and if you do, how do you overcome that?
Oh, all the time. It's so for me, I actually just try to switch up my environment. So if I'm getting writer's block, I know Sam mentioned this, and it's dangerous. But I mean, you know, driving around, you get inspired. I try to put myself in different settings. I don't do it too often, but you know, sometimes movies, you know, can inspire or just kind of create that emotion.
I think it's important to know, especially for the writers and people starting out, that the majority of your stuff is not going to do anything. Like, expect to write 100 songs to get 10 that you're not embarrassed of at start. You know, maybe out of those 10, you have one that you're going to show your friends. And
we got a placement from 3 years ago.
Yeah, and the thing is, you never know when it's going to happen. Like, we had songs before I moved out here, we were doing stuff over just internet for years. And then, like, you know, 4 years later, that song that he did in his living room and I did in my basement, like, it's placed.
Sounds like an OST or something.
Yeah, like, so just never, you never know when something's going to happen. And just keep making. Just don't get stuck on one song, you know, keep moving.
Thank you. And also, by the way, Lady with the White Cap will be the last question, and then we have to end the panel for the next panel to happen.
Do you have to write your lyrics in Korean?
No, but actually that's a really good question because I tend to try to troll the A&Rs because I'll write everything in English and then sometimes I'll drop some Korean in there and it has no context whatsoever. And sometimes I'll add things that are just completely shocking and I just picture in my head how shocked they are while they're listening to this, especially J.R. Park listening and going shaking his head. But I don't know, I have fun with it. But sometimes you can pick out a concept or a theme from just even some crazy ideas that's happening. Yeah, thank you so much.
What's a specific example of a time when they either came back and had you add something or had you change something and you hated it and you thought it would be awful, but you were wrong?
I was never wrong. No. None.
Like, I mean, the rap comment where it just doesn't seem to fit, but it actually
just like
really respond.
Like notes that artists usually give or something like that. Like,
Yeah, you know what I always say? Artists, when they give notes, and we call them notes, and then when they give their feedback, it's from an artist standpoint. And that's very different from a complete non-biased objective standpoint, which is the producer. They're going to say, well, you have all these 10 guitar solos, and you want it all in that song, but I'm going to tell you, maybe 8 of them can go, and we can keep 2, and that's what's going to make a hit. So we give those suggestions, and sometimes they don't take it. And I think it's funny you ask. You're asking from the other side where we're wrong. I don't know if.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think writing for other artists, like, we wouldn't necessarily have the final say. Like, eventually it's going to be a label or the artist or the group. Like, we can make suggestions, we can write the song, but in a lot of ways somebody else is going to be like, no, it's mine.
Yeah, and the reason why we say we don't know what that feels like is not because we think we're the best of all time, even though we're striving toward that. Like, we think, and also to kind of answer the gentleman's question from before, the reason why we don't get too shaken about negative feedback and not even too shaken about positive feedback is because if you want to be a great producer, you have to actually trust your intuition. And so if you trust your intuition, you have to build that up through time. And that means being wrong a lot, as you're developing that. But then when it comes to the big league and you're making these songs, you have to trust your gut. You can't just go with the wind and everyone's opinion, and then if their opinion was wrong, you're going to get the flag for it, and then you get low self-esteem about it. It's just, that's bad. You don't want to do that.